Well, what do you guys think? Should we go ahead and get started and keep us on point here?
Good idea.
We have one more person showing up and we'll have him introduce himself when he shows up. But I think to get things going here, it's our annual Bonneville County Wildfire Coordination meeting we hold annually with our partners here at the county. I'm glad to be with you guys. We're usually a month earlier doing this meeting, but for a variety of reasons, we dragged our heels scheduling it, waiting for our chief of the Forest Service, that is, letter of intent, and working through some things. So needless to say, here we are. I'm glad to be here. Important, as I know we have two new commissioners for Bonneville County with us, and some changes on our end too. So with that, do a little round of introductions. I think my name is Jonston. I'm the Zone Fire Management Officer on the Palisades and Teton Basin Ranger District. And I'll just go around the horn. Ruth
Phelps. I'm the Forest AFMO.
Clements, Bonneville County's Emergency Manager.
Karl, Casperson, Bonneville County Commissioner for District 1.
Mallard, Bonneville County Commissioner for District 3.
John Walker, Commissioner for District, that'd be the middle one too.
It's nice to meet you. Trinity Bugger, I'm the District Ranger at the Palisades office now, in
Now
place
I have
for
a face to
2
go with.
months.
Trinity,
Yes.
welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, Ryan Baum. I am the South Fork Zone Fuels AFMO on the Caribou-Targhee National Forest.
What does AFMO mean?
Assistant Fire Management Officer. So really with the forest level, myself at the district levels, specifically for hazardous fuels reduction mitigation.
So when you say hazardous fuels, you mean natural hazardous
Forest
fuels?
vegetation, yep. Yes, that's correct.
as we move along, we use a lot of jargon, a lot of words, a lot of acronyms, etc. So any point in time, please ask us a question. Certainly welcome that. And, you know, really this year, you guys got a little agenda here, but wanted to kind of bring it back to 30,000 foot level. So a lot of it will be kind of reviewed to you, Commissioner Walker. But I guess my question to the group here would be, what do you guys want to know about our fire program, or what maybe haven't we hit on, Commissioner Walker, that you would like to see or hear, whether this year, but just want to kind of tailor your guys' expectations of what you'd like to hear to what we kind of built on the agenda here. And again, keeping it really high level this year and getting us up to speed, because boy, we've been doing them for over a decade now, and we've gotten, you know, pretty detailed in some of our conversations and had exercises and that sort of thing. But what would you guys like to hear?
I'd just as basic as you can, but yet still be able to cover the things that you need to. So I worked with the Sheriff's Office for 40 years, so
Okay.
I'm familiar with that.
My experience, it's really important for elected officials to understand how it works when we have an event and get together, so that we, worst case scenario, Brad's gone out of the country on deployment, and we're trying to figure out what to do. So having an idea, that's why tabletop, nobody loves tabletops, but they do give you somewhere to start if you have an actual event. For your background, I retired from the fire department here and set up the regional teams, helped set up Idaho's regional response team system for hazmat, and then all of the special ops and stuff that goes with that to fill up stand-up readiness. So in my day, we ran the first red card class for a non-agency guys through the red card class to get carded so that we could go on team and work with y'all. That was a long time ago. But we've come a long way since then.
And I rely on John's knowledge entirely. My only exposure to wildland firefighting was as a prosecutor about 20 years ago, and we prosecuted a commander for negligence. And it was an informal, it was a we didn't take it to court, but we had a and with him that he wouldn't be an incident commander anymore. So it was very granular at that time. We went up on the mountain and saw it. 2 firefighters got killed. So that's my only experience. Yeah. But I know something about, I mean, one of the problems in that fire was the vegetation up there was very, it burnt really fast. Caught them off guard.
Kramer?
I don't remember now.
I was just trying to think of the name of the fire when
They
you
had
say
the
two.
commander or the
I don't know.
firefighters.
Fire, it's a name.
I don't,
Both firefighters from local too.
yeah, it's been.
Where was that one? Just
It was
curious.
up in Salmon.
Yeah, it's a Kramer.
Yeah,
I grew
Yeah,
up
they-
with Jeff.
they got under shelter, but it
We
was
don't
too
want
hot
those.
fast.
We don't want that to happen. We want our fire load reduced.
And frankly, the incident commander probably shouldn't have been in that position. He had put him up there on top of the mountain for that.
There's a lot of things coming to play on that.
Yeah.
and Very unfortunate outcome. Yeah, I grew up with Jeff, played ball with him for years and knew the family really well.
Yeah, it was,
Major failure in communications.
Unfortunately,
mhm.
injuries and fatalities are reality with
Yeah.
wildland fire, and wildland fire is certainly something that's common to Bonneville County. It's obviously happened in the past with the Henry's Creek fire. That was one of our last significant fire years locally, but we'll talk about more of that as we kind of jump into things. But I think that was a good way to tee it up. Hopefully throughout our little conversation in the next couple hours or less that we hit on what you guys would like to hear. And, you know, I think one of the biggest and most important things here is having the opportunity to put names and faces and that sort of thing together. I've worked with Brad for several years now over the course of time, and I think pretty seamless, our relationships here that I think as we talk about some of these topics, you'll see occurring in Bonneville County here. So with that, we'll just jump right into some of the topics here. And the first one is talking about our Forest Service Chief's letter of intent, some of the talking points for this year. And I've already heard it, but one of the chief's main points he comes out of the gate saying is reducing risk of wildfires key to our wildfire strategies. And with that is working collaboratively with our local governments, states, landowners, industry, et cetera. And when we talk about our fuel treatment projects occurring in Bonneville County, I think you'll see that highlighted here with the work Brad's been doing and what Ryan's been doing on the Forest Service side. We'll look to do a target. Yes.
We really appreciate all the fire prevention efforts. You're the one who runs the grants, cutting all the, yeah. When we first took office, I was really impressed with that, especially it was in the middle of the California wildfires when we were learning about it.
Yeah, it's been great to work because we're treating both sides of the fence there. And one of the
Yeah.
next points here is doing the right work in the right places where we have the values at risk, and doing that sort of work where we can increase that margin of safety for responders, increase their margin of being, you know, effective in those areas. And, you know, if we ever had a future event, being successful there, protecting life and property. So that's the intent there, obviously, and it's right in alignment with the chief here too. So furthermore, chief goes on and talks about our response this year, and it's going to be focused on safe, aggressive initial attack, keeping fire as small as possible where we can. With that, we're safe and practicable to do so. It's, you know, not always safe to engage our firefighters where it's steep, rugged. There may not be a lot of values in that particular area. And we'll talk about our response zone map as it relates to everything there. But our main intent this year is safe and aggressive initial attack, keeping fire as small as possible within Bonneville County there. We'll get into kind of the exceptions to that. Again, it usually comes back to safety, whether it's not safe for our folks to get in there. Along those same lines, this year, in season prescribed fire where nationally, if we're in a prescribed, I'm gonna pause for a second.
Sorry.
You want to introduce yourself as you come in?
The district ranger up in Driggs, I got this call today, so sorry about that.
I think you probably recognize most of the folks, but it may not hurt for our two new commissioners to introduce themselves.
Karl, Karl? Good to meet you, Jay.
Michelle Mallard.
Michelle? Nice to meet you. Seen you here before.
We just barely got going talking about Chief's letter of intent. We'll just keep diving right back into it. This year, a little bit different. When fire activity increases nationally, our preparedness level commensurately goes up. We just went to preparedness level 3, I believe. Yeah. So at preparedness level 3, anytime we would want to be doing any prescribed fire, or if we wanted to manage a fire for anything other than a suppression objective, say resource objective, we have to get regional, nearly national approval to do those sort of things. So a little bit of change. It used to only happen at preparedness levels 4 and 5. This year it's preparedness level 3. So that just kind of ties right back into keeping fire as small as possible. We know it's probably going to be a busy season in front of us. So that's a little bit new this year. The intent of a lot of our preseason meetings is so you guys are aware of any kind of prescribed fire or vegetative type treatments we have on the forest. So you guys are informed on those before we might strike a match later in fall and that preparedness level falls, or why we would look to manage a fire for resource objectives and where those areas are across the forest within Bonneville County. So that's another little emphasis point. Lastly, he really talks about detection and using technology. We know that's rapidly expanding our capabilities there. We do have remotely operated web cameras that we have available to us. We'll deploy those occasionally when we have a fire of longer duration. We have a AI smoke detecting camera on top of Relay Ridge, which is not in Bonneville County, but certainly has a view shed into Bonneville County.
So that AI camera picks up smoke and will send a text to all of the people that have access to it. So then you can look at it, see if it helps pick up ag burns and all kinds of different type of things.
And then along the same lines, a lot of remote sensing capability with satellites that are going around the Earth to detect heat signatures. That's another way of detection, monitoring fire growth, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we have UAS capability locally that is at our disposal. So all those tools help us in detecting, managing fires on the landscape within Bonneville County. Any questions on that? Any additions? What's it?
UAS.
Oh, sorry, unmanned aircraft system. It's a drone. Yep, there's the acronym, so. I guess Relay Ridge
Is big holes. So like if you're in Driggs, it's like due west of Driggs. And so it's kind of like north. That's it. Okay. Between Driggs and Rexburg, how's that?
Somewhere right in here, I would say.
we would have a view shed into a lot of the Moody country, Table Rock country, river country, as you're heading out towards Swan Valley. So pretty good view shed over a lot of that country over there. Kind of change gears, talk about some talking points here for a minute. Feel free, chime right in, so it ain't just me talking here. Any questions that come along. Talking about firefighter and public safety and kind of trends statistics wise, but 98% effective suppressing fires and keeping them small. It's about that 2% that become large, complex fires on the landscape. So we're pretty darn effective at putting fires out small. We have a lot of resources at our disposal to do that. Of those 90 of those fires, 89% of them are unfortunately human caused fires. whether, fireworks, campfires escaped, etc. Unfortunately, most of them are human caused. And those occurring on private land and then spreading onto our public lands. I'm not going to go into all of them, but there is a slew of websites there that might be nice. Kind of looking at you, Brad, communication sites to share in the event of fire in the county. You're probably aware of most all of them, but if we do have smoke in the air, some resources there to share with the public on, health concerns or where the smoke might be coming from, that sort of thing. Obviously, a little plug on drones and staying away from a fire area, because if they're flying, it shuts our aircraft down from a safety standpoint there. And then there's a link to the Predictive Services Outlook. And I usually print the Predictive Services Outlook off and have it available, but I didn't today, but I'll be able to give the cliff notes. And I know Rue has it pretty well locked in here, what our outlook for this year is looking like. A whole bunch of information there available to you guys. Talk about some numbers, and we'll get more into what we have locally staffing wise. I still don't see Chief Crystal on yet for him to talk about, but anyways, there's 32,000 resources that we have to manage fire across the nation. Forest Service has about 70% of those, and a lot of the aviation that we have available to us, that's all Forest Service aircraft for the most part. We have 11,000 operational wildland firefighters each and every year, and a variety of support personnel that aren't maybe primary fire that help support fire in other capacity there. That's kind of really the high points I wanted to hit with some of the national key fire messages this year. Any thoughts, comments?
You guys would be incident command for anything in fire that occurs, right? Is that,
It kind of depends.
is that okay?
Depending on where it
Incident
started.
command, it's like, sometimes there's joints, like the chief is usually the IC on anything up to the forest or the BLM. And then sometimes it's whoever's there first is the IC until they're relieved by someone of higher qualifications. And so it'll be, and a lot of times when you get into those border fires, they're both private and federal, then you have two ICs that are just kind of sitting next to each other, and that's called, unified command.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
I know we have our response zone map in front of us, not the best place to maybe talk and refer to it, but if you guys wanted to lean in, I do want to touch a little bit on this. If you don't have it electronically, let's make sure as a action item that you have it available. I know Chief Crystal has it, but we want to share it with everybody that is a responder, of course. And so with the map here, you'll notice there's all sorts of colors, obviously. I want to focus in on more of the Bonneville County side of things here, and anything in red, which there isn't a whole lot within Bonneville County, those are automatically a response or a full suppression strategy to us. Those red areas, obviously anything white here, that's going to be private. That would be a full suppression strategy there. That's why our red is a little bit less, because you hit the forest boundary and we didn't color code anything where it's private property. So red areas, again, full suppression. Orange is more than likely a full suppression response, given anything that moves, downwind with fire spread. It's probably going to touch values at risk, private property, that sort of thing. One thing this map isn't showing, I wanted to change this whole area here to orange. It's everything on the west side of Swan Valley to more orange.
So this is north and Idaho Falls is down here.
North here, yep.
They want us to rotate that so it's oriented properly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. I can only fit in my head, I just need to. It would be useful. I just put this one
It's right here.
together if it's,
It's like, there's Driggs and
here's Rexburg, Idle Falls would be off the map, Swan Valley's right here. So
Okay,
Palisades.
yeah, and the dams.
Palisades Reservoir.
Okay.
So we talked about red, orange is more than likely, you know, we're gonna be a full suppression response there. This area, again, I wanna kind of see more orange, but it depends, right? Could be late September, October, and we have a fire up high here on Red Ridge. We may look at maybe not so much of an aggressive suppression response there, given the time of season, that sort of thing. As you move into more your yellow areas, that's kind of that 50-50, depends on what our response strategy would be, given more remote to values at that point, fire spread moving away from your values at that point, and probably looking to manage that fire for more protection and resource objectives. A little bit moving away from a full suppression strategy, but all strategies are still available to us. Green areas, we'd be more actively looking at managing a fire for resource objectives. Having said that, though, our chief's letter of intent again for this year is that we try to put fires out as small as possible. So
Just kind of step back a little bit, you know, like this map's used multiple different ways, but, you know, the vegetation continues to grow out there. And so every year we're getting more and more fuel out there. And there's a lot of, you know, pressure to, you know, if you log it, remove that large woody debris, then that reduces the fuels. That does work to an extent, but it also creates finer fuels that burn faster as well. And so typically, you know, every 150 to 200 years, this area burned naturally. And so we're trying to help.
What year are we now?
150.
175?
Yeah.
And so, you know, managing these fires and allowing fires to burn that subalpine fir, which has absolutely no value to anybody, you know, doesn't even really make good firewood. It really does help us
Right.
prevent larger fires in the future. And then this map, I mean, like, so Spencer's sitting here and saying, you know, we're trying to keep fires as small as possible. But I have been on fires in northern Idaho, actually, where there's like 350 fires. There are, you know, 5 incident management teams, and each team has like 10 to 30 fires that they're trying to deal with. And there's just not enough resources to go everywhere. And so this green, what happens, like the green area, you tend to ignore those fires. And then you start working, you're really worried about the white and the red fires. That's where all the resources are. And then you start moving to the orange fires next. And so it's more of a prioritization of resources when everything's limited at that scale. And so it just helps you, you know, by greens further back, and it's not as
What's the
valuable
pink?
stuff like that.
it's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. Pink areas are where we have protection responsibilities on private timbered lands through the state of Idaho. So those areas we would be responsible to respond to and provide fire protection
Because it's
on.
got valuable timber on it. that the state
Exactly,
owns.
yeah. So that's a perfect scenario where, yes, it's on private property. And we would work in unified command with the local fire chief and our IC to provide fire protection in those areas. There's a lot more that kind of goes into it with the state offset agreement, but I'm going to keep it super high level where we got protection responsibilities there essentially. And again, you know, over the course of years through whether East Idaho Fire Chiefs Association, et cetera, we work really closely with all of our county partners, and we'll talk about some of the agreements we have, but work really close with Chief Crystal up in Swan Valley, Chief Vogt down in Alpine, who has protection responsibilities in Bonneville County along the McCoy Creek area. So that's really a plus there. I think a couple other plugs on the map and kind of tag on to what Jay's mentioned. We have so many tools available to us to manage our public lands, right? Whether it's mechanical treatments, logging, chainsaws, et cetera, prescribed fire, whether prescribed fire treatments or pile burning, or the use of a natural ignition to help, meet some of our resource objectives. And that's why we would look at, in those yellow or green areas, manage a fire where there's less risk to any kind of value. So those are the tools available to us to manage our public lands and the vegetation out there, recognizing fire exclusion isn't always the right answer, right? And so case in point here, last year out in the Fall Creek area, in the month of September, October, I believe, we managed a fire out there that roughly grew to about 6,900 acres and kept it within our pod lines. Pod lines are potential, lots of information, potential operational delineations. What does that mean? It's either a road,
You put that in an acronym.
right? Road, a river, a natural fuel break from, say, timber to grass. So along this map, you'll see all these lines on here. And so we managed a fire to meet some of our resource objectives.
Brad, wow.
Within our pod lines there are potential operational delineations. And again, that helps inform us to where we see an advantage to be able to contain a fire. And we share that again with our partners. So kind of brings us all to kind of one common operating picture on our response to fire within the county.
So those pods, those potential operational delineations he's talking about, we have a grant that the state of Idaho has given to the Madison Teton Grooming District, just on the north end of the holes. And they're buffing out the edges of the roads with masticators and some timber stuff to increase the sight distances and improve the snowmobiling, but it's right on my pod lines. And so it's also helping increase that effective area there. So it's kind of a double benefit project for us. So,
Any questions? I know we're covering a lot of ground here.
That's what you were going to check on this Friday, wasn't it? On the. or
Yeah,
they're
actually,
doing along the roadway up there.
different part of some of the project on Highway 26 from the dam to the state line.
But that's what you're doing is the burning, right? Edge or clearing.
Yeah, clearing the forest floor.
So that's a
Grind
county
and-
project.
Yeah, so
Can you explain what's going on?
Yeah, so we're working on getting site showing. So from the
That's
dam to the state line, we're actually gonna put out a bid on state-owned land, because we're able to get the deeds identified, so we know what's owned by Bureau of Rec and Forest Service. So we're gonna bid out doing a roadway clearing for as much as we've got money for, to essentially approximately between 20 and 50 feet off the side of the road. We're gonna masticate from one end to the other to basically give a buffer zone on the highway to prevent starts from the highway from spreading up into. So that's what we're talking about. So it's will be mostly mastication.
that's-
There'll be some cut and remove. We're not planning on burning any piles where it's so close to the roadway. But we'll be working with ITD and then our hazardous fuels reduction to be able to get that corridor opened up so that still remains a safe thoroughfare. Even if we've got fire in the area, we don't have it burning up on the road.
So are you staying off the forest, or are you doing?
So we're staying off the forest, so it's gonna be state-owned land and private land along the corridor.
Just so you know, I mean, like, so if it's in the ITD highway corridor,
So there's a difference between ITD's right of way and state-owned land. So ITD has forest right of way.
Right.
We got the deeds for the portions that the state owns the property.
but for the Forest Service, we consider that management of that vegetation along the edge of the highway is ITD, so they could remove those trees along that section in cooperation with us, if you'd like.
So, yeah, so we've got, our grant funding is a little funky, so we're working with IDL to make sure we stay within their rules.
Okay, cool.
So,
No, that makes sense. I just,
Yeah.
was throwing it out there as like, you could go around on our stuff as well to make it uniform.
yeah,
We just
ITD's
need to-
funding for tree removals, but mostly.
No, it's okay. Tracy knew that it was happening and did say that it would come up in the future, but yeah, I think if it sounds like there's no interest or need to impact national forest system, so as long as
And
that
the issue
doesn't
is the
come
way
into
that they
play.
wrote our grant, we're not allowed to touch any of your trees at all. So we've had issues like, for example, there's a 30-foot strip in front of some private property that's state land, forest, private, we weren't allowed to cut 30 feet between because of the grant funding.
So are there any areas that you won't have that 30-foot buffer that are butting up to national forest? Cause I mean, I think.
I don't think so, other than some of the rocky, right in here, where it's just basically cliffside.
Right at the
But
base.
there's not really anything that we can remove
Okay.
anyways, because most of the issues with not being able to get our buffer are tied to terrain, cliff sides don't really grow anything anyways, so. But I don't think there was anywhere that we've identified will be a problem after looking at the actual state-owned deed for the construction of Highway 26, so.
Reach out if anything changes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, I think you might know, Trinity, you probably know too with your background, but it's federal money that goes to the state, then to the county, and that money can't be used to treat federal land.
Right, that's correct.
Which sounds as strange as it sounds, is the reality of it, so
Kinda typical.
unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
Little 30-foot sections are left untouched there.
Yeah, so.
Maybe we can get them with the East Palisades project if it's covered by NEPA.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. Like if there are any areas that there could be complementary work done by us.
I think so.
For consistency.
Roadside, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we would be interesting to have to get around any.
It's just interesting because ITD is doing the same thing on my side of the pass, or well, on our both sides.
Pine Creek, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this will also be in the conjunction with some application work that'll be done on private land, also along the highways.
It's a big grinder.
Yes, I know what it is.
Depending on the degree, it could be a power grafter. That's 2-inch branches getting paled into 8-inch trees, pretty impressive.
Call a slight audible maybe in our agenda here, but I think since we've been talking about fuel treatment projects, our conversation naturally went there. Let's take a minute to kind of talk about our fuel treatment projects we have in the county, and start with you, Brad, if you wouldn't mind talking about what I think might be worthwhile, where you've been and where you're going and what you just spoke of essentially.
So we've been working in the Lakeview, Jack Branch and Rudd subdivisions, which are in this area here, down into here. So basically this section of the highway, we've been using the IDL grants, they're the hazardous fuels reduction grants to do shaded fuel breaks on large parcels, do defensible space, roadway clearing on private roads, as well as, or I guess defensible space. And then now we're moving into a larger roadway clearing. We did a smaller roadway clearing project along 26 earlier, a couple years ago, through some really rough stuff. It helped increase visibility for roadway travel, as well as it creates that buffer so that if you get that individual that's dragging tire chains, that it starts out small and you're able to get a jump on it before it starts burning into brush, is the thought process we have. We've been selling it as a double-sided sword. It helps to defend private property if a fire burns down. It makes your home more defensible, more likely to survive. On the other side, it also means that if you accidentally light something at your cabin on fire, it gives you more time before it gets up into wildland. It doesn't start burning down Forest Service property, because then there's some liability issues there when we're talking with homeowners. So make sure they understand that, especially with a lot of the rentals up in the area. So we've had a lot of success with that. Once we got some work done on the ground and people saw what it actually looked like, then they were a lot more willing to buy into it. So we've been able to do a lot of different properties up there. I think we're over 75 acres treated up in that area, and then that'll go up a lot with our roadside fuel project and some of the other homes we've got on our wait list now. So yeah, the grants come in, they're no cost to the county. There's not a cost share or anything on those. Just have to administer it and roll it out, and then we're able to get this work done. So
Is that between Big Elk and Indian Creek? Is that stretch?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we've been focusing. And now we opened up, rather than having that be an arbitrary line, our new arbitrary line is the dam and the state line. Since we can't go work in Wyoming, so we just figure might as well open it up as much as possible, and you get much north of the dam, then you're really getting into private. That's not bordering Forest Service so much as the valley opens up. So that's where we've been focusing. We're trying to make inroads with a couple new neighborhoods up in that area to continue that defensible space work. But this summer's project is to get the highway lined out and then the homes in space in the name of the neighborhood up there that you're in, John, but
Reuben, Quaker Haven.
Quaker Haven, yeah. So get those parcels that we've got signed done so that we can make sure that we're kind of creating a protective umbrella around the values up there, and then try to reduce roadside fires spreading up into the Forest Service by having a buffer on the side. That's what we've been doing as a county.
How current is your CWPP?
So we are in the process of renewing it this year. We just had, our most recent one was 2020, so we're
Yeah.
updating accomplishments. I don't see a huge change in how we view our WUI, just because we
Wooey.
wildland urban interface identified zones. So that we can, because we anticipated growth when we updated them last time. So I don't think those zones will change significantly. It's mostly an accomplishments that we're going to continue with what we've been doing for the most part. So
When do you plan to have meetings upcoming, maybe
July,
July?
yeah. So we're making sure it's going along with our all hazard mitigation plan. So we're just waiting for some imagery on and map it for our hazard mitigation plan to be in place. Then we'll update the wildfire protection plan along with it. So
Imagine we'll see some invites coming, because we probably have some accomplishments to share for you there. And then, I don't know, it might not hurt to put a second eye on some of our wildland urban interface areas and the way they're mapped, just to confirm they look good. And then any kind of the modeling, which you probably may stick with what you had to identify our higher risk type areas, but what's your thoughts there? And we don't need to go all.
I'm good with collaborating with you. We just got delayed a bit because IDL's funding and their fuels mitigation staff weren't reassigned temporarily. So I kind of pushed some stuff back because modeling other such items became unavailable temporarily while those staff were reassigned. So we weren't able to get those products. So that's what we're waiting on. So
CWPP stands for
Community
Comprehensive
Wildfire Protection Plan.
Community Wildlife Protection.
Wildfire Protection Plan. So it's how we outline how we're going to try to reduce the county's risk of wildfire impacting developed areas.
Prioritize areas for treatment, the risk modeling behind it, and then the mapping of wildland urban interface areas, which are important because the way those are mapped, and if there were ever wildland urban interface codes requiring X, Y, and Z, whether building construction materials or defensible space, those sort of things, that would come into play with where those areas are mapped within the county as well. So it's a good product, good tool for the county. It helps guide us with our federal projects, and it helps with funding on Brad's side and receiving the grant monies, that sort of thing.
Do the
So
work he's doing.
Yeah.
really a pretty important document to all of us here collectively, and we like being involved with those updates along the way too.
So is that something you guys sit down and come up with together? Or not?
So typically we meet with all the fire agencies, anybody that has fire responsibility, so BLM, Forest Service, Fish and Game, because they've got the refuge. Yeah, that's what it is. The refuge. So they have fire responsibility within their property. We sit down and make sure that we're all on the same page, and that we're tracking accomplishments of what's being done so that we have a reference for future work of what's been done, what we're identifying as being problematic, and but we want to resolve and protect. So,
Like Grace Lake, is that
so,
you get Grace Lake wildlife?
Camas Creek,
Tax Creek.
or Tex Creek, sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, yeah.
So just a question, so last year, for the first time, I was on a fire where the county had, and their CWPP, they had included evac zones that gone to that level. And so when we were doing evacuations because of the fires, it was like, the sheriff was like, we're gonna evac, B52 and 28, and it was like a preset thing in their GIS, and they just were able to turn those on rather than having the GIS guy run in and kind of do a new map. I don't know whether that's something that you guys, and that's a very active fire area. I'm not sure it's something.
We haven't done anything to create zones. We've actually had a lot of success with our dispatchers with the rollout of our integrated public alert warning system. Being able to, on the fly, be fairly flexible to be able to listen to an incident commander and have them draw that out as they look at the current incident.
So they could do it pre-zonage.
Yeah, so we've been using it for just 2 nights ago. They issued one when the hatch pit grass on the side of the hatch pit was lit on fire. They were able to send out notifications on that as it happened. So we've had pretty good success. They use it for more than just fire as well. So we've got a minimum training standard that we require anybody that serves as a supervisor to have to be able to do that at any time. So
were you notified on that fire?
I was notified because my wife is covering for fire right now. So I could just log into CAD and see that they cut the gate, they went in there, one of the fire trucks got stuck. I was able to track that, yes. So.
A lot of the counties use that, Jay, like that
Yeah.
stuff down in Okie. They did that. Anybody driving on I-15 right there got an alert, but
No.
it's pretty commonly used now.
Yeah, so, pre-identified zones are well,
Yeah,
if you've got
I've seen
landmark and consistent residents. The challenge is cellular moves around, and even some of the best companies that are trying to sell it, I mean, the cost is extremely high. They're like, yeah, we've got between anywhere from a 60 to 75% capture of who's actually in that area, versus the integrated public alert warning, that hits plus in excess of 98% of people that are in there. If you've got a really, really old phone, a lot of times you get missed, or you'll get hit being way, way far away. But so if the phone doesn't know where it is, it's hard for us to tell it where there's a problem. So you either don't get it or you get it really far away.
So I think let's segue into projects in Bonneville County or closely adjacent on National Forest System lands, Ryan, and kind of how those puzzle pieces line up there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you bet. So the work that Brad just mentioned along Palisades Reservoir really cheers perfectly and kind of makes that point of some of the work that we've got going on the Forest Service side. So we have a large project area right in this area between Big Elk and Indian Creek that you mentioned, our East Palisades project area. And several thousand acre project area with a combination of commercial timber harvest, prescribed fire, and hand mechanical work. Again, immediately abutting the work that the county's doing there along those neighborhoods. We will be beginning work in that project area about 1 month from now. We have a contract crew coming in to complete about 300 acres of hand mechanical treatments immediately adjacent to the private and forest boundary. So what that will look like, again, all the way from Indian Creek to Big Elk, right along the forest and private property boundary is a 100-foot shaded fuel break, removing more smaller diameter fuels, which create the ladder fuels, limbing trees that will remain to remove those ladder fuels and deaden down fuel as well. So a 100-foot shaded fuel break sale, so that'll be a pile burn project a year from now, after those fuels are, all that vegetation is cured and dries out, we can go through and burn those piles, so they'll most efficiently burn. And that will kind of, that fuel break itself will kind of serve a two-part purpose. Not only will it be a standalone fuel break along the forest and private property boundary, but will also serve as a fuel break and a holding feature for future prescribed fire down the road. Any questions on the East Palisades project there?
Do you know when the timber sales are anticipated to start?
So the timber sales have been marked, have been put out to bid and received no bids. So the timber sale, you know, it's there's layers to that. There's some access issues, and then just the timber market itself fluctuates, and so we're still hopeful that those are sold.
Can we go back and have a couple of questions about the
Yeah, you bet.
100-yard or 100-foot?
100 foot.
100 feet,
Yep.
and that's gonna follow between private property lines and the Forest Service.
It's correct. Yep. So it'll,
Gonna throw the map up that shows the private boundary along. that
Great.
area.
oh, perfect. Thank you.
So I'm guessing that work comes through along, said problems with access. How are the crews gonna access that? This can be interesting for me to watch because I'm right there. And,
Great.
and there's, just actually gonna.
Yeah.
This is Pixton Lane. That's the private boundary and the Forest Service boundary. And this guy at the top of Pixton's got heavy equipment up there cutting a road on the Forest Service property. Which
Yeah,
I
there's-
figured you'd want to know about. 'Cause,
Yeah,
I mean,
you'd
they're
be surprised how
Nobody
many,
ever does, we keep
Caterpillar
seeing,
how many
that, and you
people.
can see where there's a couple of
it's just
roads
free
on
land,
here
do what you want on it.
That's right.
that extend.
I was in AUSA
This is
for quite a while,
Pixton.
so
I have all kinds of
all the timber
bicycle
cutting,
trails and things.
yeah.
So just put a white trespassing sign.
Up from that one, but this one was, I think it's this one, because it can't see, but just hearing,
Timber cutting.
like,
people would go up there and
it's
just
there.
Yeah.
go to bank
You know, and,
account, just go up there and
I
put it
think
See a lot
we
of
might
that
have
where
heard
people's
about
that
backyards
road.
keep expanding and
yeah,
growing onto.
and they're pretty
onto
obvious, they're
national
cutting
forest.
the road, they're pretty big razor folks. They don't seem to care much about the rules.
Yeah, and I wish I could overlay kind of our project area on this or have it quickly digital.
That's.
Our,
Yeah.
our. So. It's right part of the county. Our recent flyover's 6-inch resolution up there. So you zoom in, it's pretty good. So this is Pixton, what's that?
I can see is
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
That's this Pixton right here. You
Yeah.
can see right here, they've extended up and they've got a flat spot, looks like for a trailer here. But this was last year's stuff. There's a new one and it sounds like it's coming off of this property and going up into here. But so you're gonna,
And this is
That-
just
that
south of Big
line
Elk,
is-
then, is that right?
pardon me?
This is just south of Big Elk.
Halfway between Big Elk and Blowout. Actually, exactly halfway is that road right there.
Yeah.
Big Elk and Blowout.
And
So this is Booth Canyon
Mhm.
here. Yeah, Pixton.
Yeah.
And so this is the stuff that's gonna get cleaned out, this right away that Brad's been working on.
Mhm.
And both sides bid and all of that is gonna get cleaned too, which makes my neighborhood safer.
Not clear cut, but just thin, or is it?
So we've got a specific prescription, so
Yeah.
it's under 8 inches goes, unless it's
Big
like
stuff,
quick
limit
easement.
up.
We remove all the brush, and then we limb up anything over 8 inches to approximately 6 feet. Some crews don't know how tall 6 feet is off the ground. Some of them think that's as tall as they can stick the chainsaw over their head, but to each their own. But it's at least 6 feet. So some go above and beyond. So some of the crew members may be vertically challenged, not know where 6 feet is, but we've had
Well,
some
that'll be,
variety of,
That'd be nice.
What it ends up
Our
looking
big
like,
concern is a
but-
lightning strike on the backside.
for the most part, is 6 feet or above, and then
Comes right in.
we've actually got a contractor we've been working with that's been
There's a lot
using
of
a
dense
mini excavator with
forest
a
over there.
masticator on the end of it. And that's
So we have
made
a
it a lot
pretty
more economical.
similar
because they can grind
prescription
out to
to what Brad
50
just
feet off the edge.
identified there, so. For what we'll be doing along that 100-foot buffer, and that will go here, so off of, from the private property line, inside the forest, 100 feet, all the way. From Big Elk down to Indian Creek, and then, just send this around, and this may, suit you, but that's the green line is
Lower
that-
Valley's
that buffer line.
due for doing their retention line.
They're working on it.
Are they?
Yeah.
When the stuff in their high tension line hits 18 feet, you can figure it's about that.
Yeah, they've been
For defensive
Okay.
space, there's
And
minimum
that
requirements.
along
gives it
that
us
line.
At least
fire break.
6 feet from a structure, so if you have a house and you have a tree.
Excellent, that's good news.
No
Yeah.
part of the tree can be closer than 6 feet.
So a couple other projects that we have going on.
Interesting to see your Forest Service signs back where they belong instead of where they've been moved.
Yeah, they're there. There's Carsonite signs all the way along, and it's currently flagged now with flagging. We've
I
got our
saw a
trees
new
up.
flagging up because I was up looking to see where that line goes in relative to where the heavy equipment is. And I saw new flags. It's like, they come do this so they knew where the line was, or you guys did?
Correct, yeah, our
Excellent.
crews did that in preparation for this contract that will be starting
Well,
next
I know
month.
a couple that actually moved those markers before they had the planning and zoning come up and look for their permits so that they could show that they had their distances. People are just creative.
Yeah,
Well, when surveys are done, they'll identify them anyway, so it doesn't really matter where they move them to.
Oh, no, but for our planning and zoning, we won't say, oh, that's the,
Yeah,
that's the
they would
boundary,
just
you're
look
back
at it,
20 feet.
yeah.
you know.
That happens.
What other projects we got going on in Bonneville County?
couple other that we have going on is in the Flatiron area, so in and adjacent to values at risk, the Flatiron project. Where am I? Yeah, you're just below Camp Tamanawis, so another value at risk operating on the forest and organizational camp there. We do have and have been working in here for several years. Again, large scale project, commercial timber harvest, prescribed fire, hand mechanical treatments. We're continuing to work in this area. Commercial timber sale is nearing completion. Most of our hand mechanical work has been completed. We do still have piles to burn in there that we'll be really looking to hopefully knock out this fall as we start to get some cooler and wetter conditions. And then starting to do some preparation work for about a 400-acre prescribed fire in there as well, to create that defensible space below the value at risk there and the homes along the Snake River Road. On the other side of the valley, Rainy Creek, just outside of Swan Valley, again, another large project area that we've been working in. No commercial timber harvest on that, just mechanical treatment and prescribed fire. Again, one we'll be looking to do some prescribed fire in potentially as early as this fall. We'd like to burn that in the spring Spring for us has its own set of challenges just with conditions and fuel moistures and how quickly snow comes off and things clean up. So potentially we'll get in there this fall. We've been doing some activity slashing, putting fuels on the ground to help us meet our objectives under cooler, wetter conditions.
Get the mouse.
That is really the bulk of our projects in Bonneville County, with the exception of some prescribed fire in Pine Creek Pass that we'll also be looking for. Yes, yeah. And actually the units, that project area spans both counties, Teton and Bonneville. But the units, at least one of the units that we're really looking to focus on this fall is on the Bonneville side of the line, just off the top of Pine Creek Pass.
Run into the flame resistant pine trees we found at Lakeview. We should make sure to gather those pine cones. Took 2 gallons of drip torch fuel to be able to get one pile that sat out for 18 months, and we papered it over the winter.
Really?
Most we were able to get is the pine needles to burn off of it.
Oh, wow.
So we charred the branches and then spread them, but just be aware that there's been some challenges burning piles every once in a while, so. Yeah, we thought after 18 months, after papering them through the snow, that they would burn
What kind
great.
of tree was that?
So, because we've been doing a lot of pile burning up on Lakeview and ran into a patch of trees, so we had some parts that burned fantastic. We had probably about 15 piles that we could not burn.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, getting them cut, pile is only half the battle, right?
Yeah,
Still gotta get done after that.
that's the most flame resistant tree I've seen to date. So,
Plant those everywhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
Any questions on kind of what we've got lined up in the county for the coming year?
What is their, I don't know if prediction is the right word, so I was up at Stanley Lake and Redfish, and then up in northern Montana, or northern Idaho and Montana. And there's a lot of grass in the forest areas. Is that a predictor of fuels for when it dries out? Is that, do you guys have a feeling for that? Is it, because it's been a dry spring, rain wise?
Put a pin in that one. That's one of the last topics we'll talk about as far as our predictive services outlook. So don't let me forget, but that is on our agenda, and we'll touch on that right at the end if that works for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Might jump in here for a second. So what? Why are we talking about all these fuel treatment projects? And you can see both from the Bonneville County side and the Forest Service side, we're doing the right work in the right place to protect the values at risk. Why does that matter when we start doing prescribed fire up above those areas? Is one, you guys are certainly informed and hopefully supportive of our efforts there, because once we strike a match with prescribed fire, or anytime, of course, there's wildfires going on, smoke becomes of a concern. So that last one Ryan was talking about is right front and center to Irwin. And when we go to maybe put some prescribed fire on the ground in there, probably next year, that's going to raise probably some eyes and bring a little bit of concerns, and folks might have be calling. And so that's our requirement. We're supposed to be reaching out to our partners and informing you guys of our projects we have on the docket and future prescribed fires, and hopefully gain your guys' support, because we're all in it together. Fire has no respect to lines on a map. It'll burn from private to state to forest and vice versa, and it brings us all into the fold here. So that's kind of the why behind why we're talking about all the fuel treatment projects that we're doing along the way. So I just kind of wanted to tie some of those pieces and parts together, because those are all those puzzle pieces of us working together.
What do you guys do to let the public know when you're going to be burning in places that they notice?
Want to take that?
Yeah, so we have for any prescribed fire that we do, whether it be large broadcast landscape scale or smaller pile burn scale, we have a notification process that we go through. which includes our county partners, whether it be the sheriff's office, emergency management, all of kind of our internal players, and then also our Forest Service Public Information Officer. And so we push that message to them, and they help to spread that to the wider audience, the public.
What is that, like social media,
Yep, so-
signs on the side of the highway?
Newsread,
Public
News A.
notices, yeah.
All of the
Okay.
above, yeah. So and that's something that, us in this room can talk about right now too, is we're gonna push that message from the Forest Service side. And then as much as that can be shared by you guys through your channels as well, we just multiply, our audience that is reached. So yes, we're hitting social media, we're hitting the local news channels, signs on the road, and our county partners. And then if the county can help spread that out as well, then we're just reaching far more people.
So some of the stuff that I've seen happen, like we can post on Facebook,
Right.
for example, but we can't do anything after. It's like, we just put it out there and
Right.
it just sits there. And then, like my partners, especially in Teton Valley, I think as soon as Brian lights a match, there's like, 50 Facebook posts. There's smoke up there. Why is there smoke up there? And I can't like repost that, but my partners will say, they'll repost for it. Like
Right.
the fire chief up there will post things, and then there's like community members who repost, and then it just like dies. But if it's not for that partnership, that
Right.
agreement, then it just sits there and they build themselves into this frenzy.
There's only so many people in our one who subscribe to the
Yeah, and so-
Facebook page
so-
of Forest Service.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it
that's
has
your
been
area,
super
so you
helpful.
You get the phone calls.
They're too busy watching Dancing
They
Birds.
watch the Swan Valley page real close, so.
Right, we have the community page at Teton Valley, but I can't post on it. So,
Yeah.
So that partnership has really been helpful on that side for us. And something that
We've also worked with that I paused the direct to phone. We did one last year that pinged one of the ATV parking lots, set it up there, said, be aware there's controlled fire at X location. Talking with Swan Valley's fire chief, and said that made a substantial difference on the number of 911 calls they got for one of your fires. That was, or one of the burns you guys did last year at Swan Valley. So that helped a lot, because then it dings everybody's phone as soon as they get out to offload their four-wheelers or side-by-sides or whatever, it pops up on their phone. So we left that up for about a week.
That's great.
So anytime they were stopping, there was just like a text that overrode everything. The spot they had service, so that they weren't calling 911 every time they drove up there and stuff. So
Yeah, so that was probably a fun commissary. there
Yeah.
for Fall Creek, yeah.
So he said that made a huge difference for dispatch calls for them.
And yeah, certainly our local fire departments are looped in on those notifications as well.
All right, kind of keep us moving forward here. Touch on staffing and resource updates. I think I'll kind of kick us off. I still don't think Chief Crystal's necessarily on yet, but.
No, he's not. In fact, he texted me and said he's not available.
Okay, all right,
Just,
okay, thank you. Staffing for us on the Forest Service side, locally on the Caribou Targhee, in particular, this area, we're fully staffed. We have an engine located in Swan Valley. We have another engine over in Driggs, Idaho. We have a Type 3 helicopter that just came on last Friday, sitting in Swan Valley. All three of those modules are fully staffed this year, better than we have in previous years, which is great to say. And we also have a 6-person initial attack module over in Driggs, Idaho as well. Across the forest, correct me if I'm wrong, Rue, we're sitting with 11 engines, Type 6 engines, the smaller fire engines. 2 Type 3 helicopters, one including the one in Swan Valley, the other one in Pocatello. We have a Type 1 helicopter. It's a national resource, so we never see it, but it's there in Pocatello. And then we have our Type 2 initial attack hand crew up in Island Park that's staffed this year, along with a 10-person wildfire module down in the Bear Lake area. What am I missing?
You go.
Got them. BLM, we invite them to this as well. Unfortunately, don't have them or the state this year, but BLM is down 2 trucks, and the trucks they have staffed this year are staffed less than they have in previous years. However, the state does they are standing up a fire program in southeast Idaho, and they will have 2 trucks, I believe, staffed this year for the state of Idaho in our local area.
Got the trucks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty stuff I looked at.
Our tanker base is up and running down in Pocatello. So as we see fire activity increase in our local area, we'll see more fixed wing aircraft available to us out of Pocatello, supporting us and supporting also the regional situation. So a lot of resources at our fingertips there. With that being said, if conditions increase, well, hold your thought 1 second. We do have the ability to bring in additional resources under severity type conditions, which we'll talk about future outlooks. Yes, sir.
And all construction's done at Pocatello Tanker Base now, right?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. Fully functional there. And we can support very large air tankers out of Pocatello, which is a great asset for us being a host to that type of aircraft out of Pocatello. I think that covers state and fed. I think, I can't speak for Travis, Chief Crystal there in Swan Valley, but I think his resource staffing and capability remains much the same out of Swan Valley, being much of a volunteer department there. Similarly, for the Alpine Fire District, who has an agreement with Bonneville County for fire protection there along McCoy Creek, his remains largely unchanged with the volunteer fire department, and so much they can do there. However, saying all of that, this is going to kind of tee us up to our next agenda topic, but they have chief to chief agreements. So through the East Idaho Fire Chiefs Association, they have the ability to request assistance through their avenues with their chief to chief agreements there. So that opens up a great deal of capability to have surge support to any particular area through their agreements. So
The sheriff's office is also a party to that same agreement for any unprotected lands in Bonneville County, so they can get that same mutual aid on any unprotected lands. As far as resources up in Swan Valley, 2 years ago, we bought them a side-by-side razor. They've been able to equip that with a pressurized, a small pump, and then some foam system on there as well. Travis, every time I'm up there, is very grateful we're able to assist him with that. Sorry, what was it?
Isn't that a compressed foam?
Yeah, so it's got a small compressed foam, and then it has a regular pump with a water tank on it as well. They've been very grateful. They said that's been a huge benefit for them in finding fires in recreational areas because it can travel much faster than their light. So they also do have a new wildland fire rig. It's I believe it's a 4500 chassis with a bed set on the back of it. So they've got a lot better ground clearance than their old wildland rig. So that gives them a lot better access and ability to move around up there. So just to be aware. So.
And Spencer's going through the whole staffing thing. I mean, with the changes in the administration, there has been, we don't know kind of some of the hits that are going to potentially come or not associated with some of the retirements that we faced. And then as far as like on my unit, you know, there's like 6 employees that come back that had fire qualifications. They were not the first up, but they did help support the fire program. So there is a little bit of a shift from previous years.
I think one thing kind of mentioned here when we talk about resource staffing and the number of widgets we have across the area is the fact that Idaho is probably one of the fastest growing states in the country, and certainly Bonneville County sees that growth here, and a lot of that growth being in some of our wildland urban interface areas, and the number, our wildland urban interface area is growing, right? And so along those lines is the fact that public may think they would expect an engine at each one of their houses along the way, and there's just not the reality of having an engine in front of each one of them homes. So back to our fuel treatments, the more we can do on private property, the more we can do on federal property to be able to protect them, is certainly of a huge importance, and your guys' support along the way there with all that is tremendous, because we will see fire in Bonneville County and in some of our urban areas, whether this year or not, yet to be seen, but that's kind of a lot of those puzzle pieces together. Good on resource staffing capabilities, think? Okay, let's, I think we're still doing pretty good on time here. We started talking about agreements there. Rue, you want to talk about some of the recent changes that we've done on our side, and then Brad kind of touched on the East Idaho Fire Chiefs agreements there, but Rue, you want to talk about agreements for a minute?
Yeah, so we've got kind of three separate agreements kind of in you guys in the area. We got the Henry's Creek RFPA. That's the first year that the Forest Service has done an agreement with them, and it's very similar to our other agreements, 24 hours free, that back and forth, we can assist each other. Spencer got that signed, a month ago or so? So we have that one in place, and then this year we have what's called a sub-geo agreement. And departments that are signed up under the state with the ICMA can enter into this agreement with the Forest Service, and it's got some pretty cool benefits. It's still got the 24-hour mutual aid assistance, but if we go beyond that 24 hours with those particular departments, we can reimburse them for the equipment that they've signed up with the state of Idaho. So Idaho Falls Fire Department, Ammon Fire Department, Swan Valley, are probably the departments in Bonneville County that are signed up under that sub-geo.
Is UConn on that?
Oh, yep, Yukon, Central, if Central's in there.
Shelley.
No, it's not
See who
Shelley.
shows up when we have a fire.
That's maybe.
I think that's it.
We are very close to getting all the signatures. We're just lacking 2 signatures from Pocatello and North Bannock, and it'll be done. So pretty cool to get that up and going this year. It also gives us the flexibility to utilize you guys, on our prescribed burns. Maybe you're not getting paid, you just want to do some training. You can do that with this agreement. You can, also set up a supplemental agreement, and the Forest Service can pay certain departments to help with funding, on the sub-geo agreement. Those are kind of some of the bigger key benefits, right, Cindy? And then we have our typical agreements that we do with the BLM and those other departments that aren't on the sub-geo, which allows us to play for 24 hours, and then after that, we'd be chatting as far as payment. So getting really close on getting all of those signed and hopefully out of the way for the year, but good progress being made.
It's, again, echo the East Idaho Fire Chiefs Association for our agreements and our working relationships we have in Southeast Idaho and Bonneville County. We've come a tremendously long ways, and I think it's important to highlight in the event we got smoke in the air. You guys know we got agreements in place and folks that have worked together to be able to respond to and work together to manage an emerging incident like that. And I want to probably, as far as keeping us moving, but I kind of want to see Brad, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the, so what does this mean to our county commissioners? What's their role as an elected official in the event of an emerging incident that goes large, that starts getting us beyond these agreements, and we're looking at any kind of state or federal assistance? But what is our county commissioners' role? What is their authority and that sort of thing? You want to take a minute or two to kind of talk about that?
The role of the commission in a situation where fire was to be outside of Forest Service land is Forest Service land, but if we had one that went on to private land and started spreading, And we are in a situation where we have values at risk. The county commission is the only one with the authority to declare a disaster and an emergency and request a further declaration from the governor. Within that, if we had values at risk, my job would be to demonstrate those to the State Office of Emergency Management. And then request the governor to apply for a fire management assistance grant. And what that would do is that would allow for cost sharing between the state of Idaho, the federal government, and Bonneville County to be able to mitigate the financial impact to the county, so that we could pull in those national resources and start spending money to protect those values. It's a long process currently for very expensive fires like the Henry's Creek fire. It took us 5 years to be able to get full reimbursement from that. And so it was in the excess of millions of dollars. We were able to reduce the county cost by 90% through cost share agreements for that. So it ended up costing the county some money, but significantly less than it would have been any other way. So that's where you guys fit in, is the legal process to make sure, then looking at making those financial decisions of where we're gonna spend money to protect values, and where we're gonna have a delegation of authority if we wanna bring in a incident management team from the Forest Service where they deal with these large scale, and what the cost negotiations with that are, and then making sure that we've got the proper channels between the state and the FEMA, and so that we're not gonna be on the hook for the cost of all that, because as county commissioners, you're allowed to spend money on whatever you guys decide to.
But we
Spending
don't
millions
like
of
to
dollars
spend
on a
money on
fire is
anything.
probably not a high on your campaign or fiscal management thought process of where county funding should go, if it's not absolutely necessary. So that's kind of the interface, and by knowing our Forest Service partners, it allows us to try to get a jump on these earlier, making sure we have the agreements there, because that all goes into that cost calculation, and being able to have that frequent communication so that we can know when we're getting into a trouble area and have good working relationships, to be able to understand what it means when the Forest Service is saying something, or BLM is saying something, or when we're talking to them about concerns that we have, so that we can make sure it's as efficient and effective as possible, so we don't end up in a situation where, because of a communication error, we end up with thousands of acres burned. And with the cost of price homes now, it doesn't take long before we've destroyed millions of dollars worth of assets. So
But the agreements in place address some of that.
yeah, so it allows us to get a lot of resources in quickly to get those fires out when they're smaller.
But it addresses the cost sharing as well.
So the cost sharing, depending on where the fire is, impacts that significantly. So the standard formula is, and this may change with the current administration because they've been talking about it, but for example, the Henry's Creek was 75% federal, 25% was split 10 and 15 between the state and the county. So the state covered 15% of the total, and the county ended up covering 10. So that's the standard structure we start negotiations at, but depending on where the fire is, where it started, and stuff like that can affect what that negotiation is. So
Is there a protocol in place for requesting assistance from the governor or whatever?
yeah, so there's an entire process. There's a eye contact through the AFO, and then we start that conversation with the IOEN division. So I'd ask for a declaration from you guys, then we would start working on that negotiation process to fill out that application to present to our FEMA region for granting of that management assistance grant. So
We would do that as a resolution or?
so
Like something.
Yes.
Seems like
We might add
like a
that
meeting we should have to make sure we don't have to
But
do
the
that.
reason
in
it only
advance.
took 5 years for Brad to complete that process was because he had all of the have to be done upfront paperwork completed and signed well inside the deadline, which hasn't been the case with some of the surrounding areas that don't get reimbursement.
Very impressive. You were able to do that in 5 years.
Mhm.
quiet. That's impressive.
And it's some of the other communication thing, I think I think these meetings are really important because you guys have constituents that are coming to you. Some of them may be very angry or, and it's just really good to have that, you know, please feel free. That's that communication thing that gets everybody in trouble. And so Kennedy's, you know, are more than happy, and these guys help tell you what's going on. And you might not be able to change it, but
Give us an answer.
So Brad, with regards to communications, are we following their social media so that we can post when they post and then
Yep, and I also am on their
and we tag
distribution list for their news releases, so.
their Swan Valley, all those groups when we post?
Yeah, so we have the ability to do that.
So that's the total that I know about social media. I know those are
Brad's
important
really
questions,
good
so.
getting things out, but
Are we still limited right now?
yeah, very much so.
I don't know. Did they,
limited by,
we've been told not, that we cannot post anything right now. So
We
The
can
key-
post
we can
about
post safety,
safety.
health, emergency. So I think
but
that
can you
gives
ask
us some
Brad to
room.
post it?
around
Well,
fire.
if they have, yeah, if he has information, we can post it.
So
They can't.
We can have a
Their
meeting
friends
with you
can?
or Brad.
You can
sharing
send him
And
a
then
note
we
and say,
can
would
do
you?
it, whatever.
Yeah.
Stuff for us.
Yes.
We're happy to do
And then
that.
once
The
you
more
post it,
information
we
they get.
can.
Yeah, we can share your posts,
Oh,
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
our project.
There's just multiple levels of approval for everything right now.
And the day that there's not, there'll be some algorithm that kicks your post because it came from a government page instead of a private page, so.
And then like, if you do end up at the bigger fire and an incident management team, then, you know, a lot of times there is a commissioner, you know, Brad would be there at a daily meeting, cooperators meeting, where you get an update, and share your concerns, and we work back and forth that way. And so usually it's Brad who would be like your representative, but sometimes there's commissioners there, so.
It's a lot funner to attend those meetings when nobody's looking at you, expecting you to say something. Stand there, look at Brad.
and when it comes to disaster declaration, the chairman in Idaho can single-handedly declare an emergency, but it has to be ratified within 7 days by the entire commission. So that way we don't have to say, put it on the agenda in 2 days, we'll get to it. You know, as the fire's burning down off the bench, we do have the ability to do that. So it's just within those 7 days. So
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Well, thank you, Brad, for touching on that. I think it was important to kind of tie what all of this means back to our county commissioners here. So thank you for that. I guess one more, and I'm not trying to drag this out because I'm going to get us done early, but there's one more layer, I guess. If, let's say we have a fire in Swan Valley under a fire district, well, you got your fire commissioners there who don't have the authority to declare a disaster. That's where that relationship with the fire commissioners and our county commissioners is super important there too. Excuse me. So I just wanted to highlight that there at times could be another layer in there, or that could affect a chief vote down there in McCoy Creek area or something, of course, too. And reaching out to Brad, I think, is a point, and standing up the EOC and getting you guys, our agency administrators, our county commissioners together to be able to talk about those sort of things. Excuse me. I just want to kind of highlight a couple things on the agenda here. There's a couple links. The bottom one is anytime, Brad, you probably were more interested in this one, but if you want to view our staffing any particular day, that's available to you guys to know what we have on resource wise. We did just get our East Idaho Interagency Fire Center, that's our dispatch center's website, up and running. So a wealth of information there that will take you to a variety of other information. And you might find of interest. I've talked about it more in detail in previous county commissioner meetings like this. But that link to the homepage to Wildfire Risk to Communities is super informative as well. It really kind of hones it down to a county level, and what is that wildfire risk? What are some mitigation strategies? I wanted to highlight those information sources there. Lastly, to your question, Commissioner Casperson, sorry, what's the crystal ball hold, right? What are we looking at? And so in this document, I just reference again the one bottom link here to the predictive services outlook. That is updated on the first day of every month. It's a new product available through the predictive services. What we are looking at this year, and just kind of start where we have been, where we're at now, and that outlook moving forward. But we know it's more of a hotter, drier spring this year. The snow came off remarkably fast. I think our snowpack last I seen was sitting at 91%, a snake above Palisades. So we know we're kind of a deficit. With that being said, U.S. Drought Monitor is showing us, I believe, moderate drought at this time for southeastern Idaho, Bonneville County areas. And as we look ahead, the next 10 to 14 days supposed to be above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation. We've had, to my knowledge, two little blips of moisture. One that just occurred with this cold front that anywhere between a quarter to a half inch of rain. And then we had one a couple weeks before that brought some pretty good rain. I think inch and a half at our weather station up on top of Pine Creek. So, but having said that, that's still deficit to what are typically May and June for southeast Idaho, our wettest months that really provide to grass growth, that sort of thing. I know we can look at it like my backyard's already drying up, right? And so we see the cheatgrass as we drive around in Idaho Falls and the outlying areas already dried out. We just seen the fire down outside of Pocatello City Creek grow to 230 acres, evacuations, they contained it, ran a lot of air resources on that, but everything is trending and setting up to be potentially, don't quote me, above normal potential for increased fire in our local area. On that predictive services outlook, that product they put out every month, they highlight those areas across the country that are above normal potential, and they're highlighted red. Right now, eastern Idaho, our dispatch area is in the white, meaning equal chance, 50-50. Red is that above normal. I would not be surprised if the next predictive services outlook that comes out July 1st would start showing parts of southeast Idaho in that above normal fire potential. I think a lot of us have been in the area for a long time and know that it's been hot, it's been dry, and we see that stress on the grass growth we have right now. So and things drying out a little bit sooner than later. So I'm going to be a little bit redundant. The next 10 to 14 days above normal temperatures, below normal precip, leading us right up to July 4th. So that's where we're at. After that, we'll continue to see where we trend, but we'll certainly know by October what the fire season was to Idaho, the nation, Bonneville County. But I've often compared this year to 96. 96 was super busy in our local area. And some of it kind of mirrors 2000, which was the super busy year. And then it's very similar to 2016. So 2016, of course, was Henry's Creek. We had two fairly significant fires on the forest, and one of those was in Bonneville County, right here in Black Burns Creek area. The other one up north on Jay's district, on the Carrot Fire, and the Tie Canyon Fire, which we brought an incident management team in for. So we'll see. I hope that kind of takes a little slice crack at your question you have there. All bets off if it turns to rain, and periodic rain throughout the summer puts that dampener on it. But what we're seeing so far in the 10 to 14, 30-day outlooks is the potential exists.
What have you seen in lightning strikes compared to previous years?
That's an
Watching the
interesting
numbers.
one. That's a really interesting one, because we used to get more lightning caused fires in the mid to early 2000s than we see for whatever reasons now. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's the way the monsoon set up and the way they push north and where that line of storms comes across southeast Idaho. I don't know, but it's really interesting why we see
Good.
less now.
Less fires, what's the numbers on strikes? Do you watch that at all?
It
Where we
depends.
are on total strike.
It still seems less to me for whatever reasons.
I would have thought this year it has been less, but that doesn't, it just means that's not what I'm hearing or seeing.
Well, one thing I would also point out, which is kind of an anomaly, to your ask of, we just had that recent lightning storm about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago each, but picked up one lightning caused fire just on top of Teton Pass, just barely off of us. But what I really wanted to highlight was the fact that just south of us, barely off this map, the Bridger Teton, bordering the Caribou Targhee, has had I think it started about a week ago, but 1,500 acres burning on the forest just barely south of us, which is a little bit early, given mid to kind of later parts of June now, but pretty early to see the Bridger Teton burning like that.
Well, it's like the pile burns that Ryan was doing earlier like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, we usually carry those forward later in the year, but this year we stopped because it's getting pretty dry.
That's pretty much all I had at this point. Is there any questions, anything for the good of the order? Got us out maybe 30 minutes sooner, which give you guys some time back, but any questions?
Next year, I think we should do this as a field trip.
I like the idea.
That's a good helicopter, maybe.
Oh, no, I don't want to be on a helicopter. I like having my feet on the ground.
You know helicopters don't fly, right?
Yeah.
They just vibrate so violently, the ground rejects it. Is it the same crew up there in Swans Valley this year?
How much?
New vendor. No, it's not a new vendor. Sorry. It's the same vendor.
Same pilot, same crew?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, crew boss.
Saw some pretty younglings getting used to their horses. Right up there on your compound is in Swan Valley.
Mhm.
They get younger, or they just.
Both.
Girls.
A little bit of both, huh?
Well, thank you. This was really informative.
Well, each year, again,
Good educator.
we hold these meetings. I usually work with Brad to get them scheduled in with your guys' schedule, and you mentioned field trip, and maybe that is something, and I always want to hear from you guys what you would like to see or talk about with these meetings. So maybe it is worthwhile to go out to East Palisades area and look at some of the fuel treatment projects that have occurred out there and do this informally out there. I don't know, but I'd love to hear
I
from you
think that
guys.
would be really beneficial. I mean,
I think if we
I
get
live up there, they
Yeah.
don't.
the groundwork done to share what a prescribed shared field break looks like, for you guys. Just, I mean, I've worked with homeowners to explain what it looks like, and until you see it, most people have a hard time grasping exactly what that looks like, so.
No, and the stuff you did,
The month afterwards.
the
it's
stuff you did
rough.
2 years ago on Lakeview, if you drive up Lakeview, which is what I did with several of the homeowners, to say, okay, this wasn't done, and then right here, see that line? This was done. Oh, that's wonderful. It's like, okay, sign here.
Yeah.
That really
See it
the
to
best,
Understand it.
far better than pictures. Right now is a good time to be doing that.
Yeah, using a masticator on somebody's private property sounds horrifying until they see what it looks like in real life. The next spring.
Yeah.
It looks horrifying immediately following,
Yeah.
but the next spring it looks great.
Well, up there, they're all concerned about their berries, right?
Mhm.
And
They'll come back.
it's gonna be a bumper year for berries if we get 2 more little rainstorms at the right time. 'Cause- Anyway, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. It was
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.